So let me get this straight. Are you saying that the cost of visit documentation is much higher than just the cost of the documentation system because it takes your time to do the documentation?
Exactly. The practice owner's time is the most expensive component of their practice, and they should be maximizing that value. So obviously, when they spend their time seeing patients, they maximize their value, and when they write notes, they reduce it.
So Dave, how do you compute the cost of writing a daily note? And more importantly, how do you compute the cost of writing all of your daily notes for the next, say, 10 years?
Well, a successful enterprise must generate more revenue than costs, and a practice owner must get used to thinking about his or her time in terms of revenue and cost. So if you're treating patients, you're generating revenue. If you're spending time on administration and writing documentation, that is a pure cost. So the first question is, what is the cost of your time? What is your hour worth? Well, the answer depends on your productivity. So suppose your practice can process 4 patient visits per hour, and it typically requires you to personally supervise 15 minutes of each visit. If an average visit, it pays $80 on average. Then your hour is worth about $320. So in this case, your optimal performance is about $320 an hour. That also means that if you spend your time on any other activity that pays you less than $320 per hour, you have to be losing money. So how much money is it that is actually being lost? Well, that depends on the time you spend not generating that $320 per hour. So if you can only write 2 daily notes per hour, then each note costs you $160 if you think about it. So if you have to write 200 notes a month, then you're losing the time equivalent of $32,000 a month. Now, if you really think about it, when you open up your clinic, you want to be in business for 5 or 10 years. So if you take that cost of $32,000 a month and you expand that over 10 years, you're looking at about $3,840,000, almost $4 million in lost productivity.
Okay, all right. It does cost a lot of money, maybe millions of dollars, if a practice owner uses a slow documentation system. So the next question is, what should the practice owner do? Because all of this seems kind of confusing.
It's not so much a factor of a slow documentation system as it is a system that has a flow of information with consistent phrases and measurements that are often used in daily notes, initial evals, or re-evals. So the computation is just an example of how you should think about your cost of any activity. Once you identify all the activities you need to perform and apply a cost to each one of those, you really get to see and you're able to focus on the activities that matter the most. And you really need to focus on reducing or optimizing the ones that don't. You can also set very clear requirements for the kinds of processes and systems you need to have in your office to help you have hours that generate $320 an hour, and very few hours that generate less or worse cost you as high as $320 an hour. So for example, if you personally spend 1 hour a week on administration and 3 hours a week on billing, then if you were to look at it over the next 10 years, you're really spending the equivalent of $640,000. So now add all of this up. Add up all of your costs. Add your rent, your equipment, your staff costs, consumable supplies, what have you, and start thinking about what processes and systems you need to reduce these costs, or really optimize your process to spend less time in things that aren't generating revenue. Right? So since documentation, administration, billing are probably the largest components of cost, then you really need to design processes and have a technology that supports those processes in your office, part of your enterprise, that address these costs first.